Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Council meeting on February 14th, 2022. Happy Valentine's Day. Before we begin, I will remind Council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. I'll start with a roll call of Council for the benefit of those watching. I'm Mayor Shantz, I'm present and I'm chairing this meeting. Councillor Martin.
Present.
Councillor McMillan.
Present.
Councillor Merlehan.
I'm present.
Councillor Redekop.
Present.
And Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Thank you. Motion that council reconvenes in open session. Moved by Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor Merlehan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll start with the land acknowledgement and then a moment of silence. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we acknowledge the neutral people also called the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples who lived here when settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. Let's just have a moment of silence. Thank you. Before I ask for disclosures of pecuniary interest, I'll just say that I'm having a little bit of back trouble. And so if I stand up, it's just to give myself a little bit of relief. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are no items to come forward from closed session. Motion that the following minutes be adopted as presented. Council minutes from January 31st, 2022 and Committee of the Whole minutes from February 7th, 2022. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Redekop. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have no public meetings, no presentations, no delegations, and no unfinished business. So that brings us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? Councillor Shantz and then Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, under the 12.11, I'd like to remove number 5 and talk about it separately, please.
Okay. Councillor Merlehan.
I'd like to remove number 2, talk about the Breslau settlement area again.
Okay. Let me just make sure I'm in the right place. Number 5 is the budget. Okay. Very good. Can I have a motion on everything except number 2 and number 5? Moved by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Number 2, the Breslau Settlement Area Transportation and Land Use Plan. Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you, I guess some general comments. I'd like to revote on this, and I'd like a recorded vote. This council's kind of gone back and forth on this particular issue, and for me, the overpass is probably one of the biggest stumbling blocks and deal breaker for this particular deal. I do want to acknowledge all of the points that Councillor McMillan has brought up about the opportunity costs of $30 million road benefiting and connecting the old and new Breslau. I 100% agree and think that he's completely right in that assessment. I think the claims are a little dubious, and the report doesn't really support that the intended purpose of the road will actually accomplish what it's going to do. When developers were part of the process all the way along for this, and were somewhat in agreement until the very end when Metrolinx changed the agreement on the overpass. It was always throughout the years, it was always intended that it was going to be a regular crossing like the other areas in Breslau that have crossings over the railway. And because they decided for an overpass, they added $15 million, which is borne on all new homes being built in Woolwich Township. And I don't see there being any benefit at all to anybody for that overpass that our taxpayers here should be borne the responsibility of paying for an overpass. So I have a pretty big problem with that, and I think if we pass this motion the way it's written now, our taxpayers are bound to pay for that over the next 10 to 12 years. And I think if we don't pass that, it does put the province back in a position where they need to come to the table to pay for something that's clearly a benefit to Ontarians, not just Woolwich Township residents. So I hope somebody else on council feels that way and won't support going forward with this report.
Thank you. Could I ask Mr. Poupé or Ms. Fries to just comment on the possibility of a level crossing? I don't remember exactly what all the criteria were.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to council. It was explored. A level crossing certainly was an option. And why it wasn't the preferred alternative was because the risk is borne solely by the Township of Woolwich at level crossings. There is a move to avoid level crossings. That is the most safe crossing you can have. You do not want to intermingle train traffic with vehicular traffic or pedestrian traffic, certainly at speed. So it was something that through discussions with Metrolinx, it would have been, the agreement would have been such that we would have taken on all of the responsibility and onus for an at-grade crossing. We have them, they exist, of course. We are senior party on Woolwich Street. We would not be senior party here, as this would be a new crossing. So that does change some of those things as far as roles and responsibilities. But in an instance like this, where it's a new crossing, it would be the road authorities' responsibility to deal with forever. And that's a huge responsibility and risk and liability, quite frankly. And why you typically do see grade separated crossings whenever you're dealing with new roads. Fountain Street's a good example of that. Of course, there's a grade separated. I know there's some serious topography there as well, but certainly they do look to grade separate roads and rail tracks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Through you to Jared or possibly Richard. Can you explain what happens if the Ontario government, I'm assuming, I don't think the feds would be involved, but if the Ontario government, the provincial government would decide to give us some monies for this bridge, how does that work with the DC charges?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz, and Mr. Petherick is here as well. I want to be clear that if this is approved and moved forward, then we would look to include this in our upcoming DC charges amendment that we are working on, that Council will see in this year. And we would continue to collect if there was an influx of funding and it was specific to this or was allocated to this by council or through application of some form, that it would simply be a dollar for dollar removal on the DC. So any monies that we receive that we are looking to put towards a development charge project, you take dollar for dollar off of the development charges. I think Mr. Petherick spoke to this before too, that if we were accruing dollars for this project and other projects come along, which they inherently will, as Woolwich continues to grow at a fairly fast clip. You're still banking up DC, so it may not be all allocated here, but it obviously could be allocated to other projects that have already been identified in a background study. So there's a long-winded way of saying that if there was grant monies or upper government funding, it would just be removed from that DC charges for that particular project.
If I could follow up, but the money wouldn't be given back to anybody. It would just be put in a reserve fund somewhere and used for future projects.
It would depend, I guess, on the reconciliation of the year, but correct. It's the growth that we envision here. No, there likely wouldn't be monies to return to anybody. They would just be redirected to other development charge projects identified.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Mr. Petherick has something to add to that. I apologize.
Mr. Petherick, go ahead.
Yeah, with you, Madam Mayor, I think one of the answers also could be that it could potentially fluctuate the development charge. So that's one of the other things that can happen. Yeah, you wouldn't see like a reconciliation where you'd be giving money back because it would stay within that reserve fund, but you could see the charge go up and down. And that naturally happens anyways as we go through studies.
So if I could, so if we proceed without this and don't start collecting DC charges, and in 2 or 3 or 5 years, the next council, whomever that might be, decides that they want to proceed with the bridge, now we're behind the 8 ball. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, account, that would be correct. And that's demonstrated, I think, already in our capital programming that we're already looking at a significant deficit with respect to the Breslau wet well, in particular, that project alone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we discussed that too, that it would require, then we're going to end up with more debenturing at some point if we want to go ahead, because we won't have the money in the reserve. Is that right, Mr. Petherick?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Were there other hands that I missed? Okay. Councillor Merlihan has asked for a recorded vote. I'll ask the deputy clerk to just, Councillor McMillan, you want to?
Sorry, Mayor Shantz, I don't think anyone actually moved it. So I was going to actually just wait until there was a mover and seconder to speak because I don't really have a question.
Okay, very good. Councillor Merlihan, you'll move it or no? You're
Yeah, I'll move it. Just a couple more comments. You know, the level crossing, you know, there's level crossings all over the place. And I happen to be one of the lucky people that every time I go to Kitchener near the Wellington and Victoria Street level crossing there, I seem to hit it every single time. And I would imagine that the traffic there is going to be significantly more than what we could assume will ever come to Breslau in the next while. So the whole liability issue, you know, I'm not reading a whole lot of stories of, you know, trains hitting cars in that area, but I'm not sure the difference there in the thing, but it is a $15 million difference that we're asking new homeowners to pay for. And then, you know, as Mr. Poupé and everybody else has talked about the growth in Woolwich Township, you know, the DCs are already quite expensive. And I've mentioned this before, a business here in town put up a very modest square box of a building. The DC charges alone were $100,000. And that was just in the last 2 years. And, you know, and he's showing me the invoice and says, you know, what did I get for this? I mean, here's my business. It's nothing fancy. And it was $100,000. So, you know, I know we've been talking about affordable housing, attainable housing and things like that. But if every time every growth element that comes along here, that we just go to, you know, attaching more DC charges, like when's it gonna, where's it gonna stop? You know, these home prices are out of control as it is. So I really hope I can get some support to not let this recommendation go as is. So that'll be it for my comments.
So what are you moving then, Councillor Merlihan?
Oh, Well, I guess if the recommendation goes ahead, somebody else could move it, and then I would say not to support it and vote against it. Is that the easiest thing to do, or would you like a whole?
It's totally up to you. If you want,
I'm open to suggestions.
Well, those are the two suggestions. You can move what you would like to see, or you can see if someone else will move the recommendation as presented.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Councillor McMillan and then Shantz.
Well, I was just going to say, Councilor Merlin and I together, we don't want this. So I would move that we defer the Breslau settlement area transportation and land use plan until we can reinvestigate a plan without the $30 million road.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Merlihan.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion, Councillor McMillan.
Yeah, I just think that if we said that we want to combine Breslau and there's a $30 million check, we probably wouldn't start with a road connecting two subdivisions. And so that's why I'm against this. I think that the idea is right, but I talked previously about sunk cost fallacy. We know we made a mistake with the development. Nobody in this room was here then. We now have two separate Breslaus, but we can't keep chasing that mistake with more money that isn't going to solve the problem. So that's why I'm against it. That's why I moved it. And that's why I'll vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Shantz. And
I
then
just
Councillor
want.
Riddick.
Okay, thank you. Through you, I guess probably to Councillor Merlihan. So how do you pay for a bridge if we decide to do it in the future and we don't do DC charges now? What's your proposal for that?
Well, the overpass could be a level crossing, and that's what all the developers that were involved in the process were expecting to happen. They were pretty shocked when it came back with the overpass included. And I mean, for the price alone, $15 million, I don't know why, like, to me, I was like, holy cow, how did that get through? And without that being a deal breaker. So I would propose that it's, if the road part is something that you want, if you have a level passing, that cuts the cost in half. And again, I still agree with Councillor McMillan on whether or not, even the $15 million for a road connecting the old and the new is going to actually achieve what you want it to do.
Okay, another one, Councillor Shantz, and then Councillor Riddick.
Thank you. I guess a comment that I would have, and one that Councillor Merlihan said, was about the traffic on Lancaster and Victoria Street, that the tracks there. But I think we would probably find that the trains are moving a lot quicker out in the Breslau area than they are in Lancaster crossing. So I think that's where the danger is for the level, for a level crossing. So that I would caution against that. I think one thing that we have to keep in mind, and I know Councillor McMillan talked about trying to patch up what has been done in the past, but I guess we're trying to develop the Breslau Community Center area a bit. We're talking about putting a splash pad in there. We spent some monies for some of the playground area and that type of thing. That seems to be the center hub of Breslau, and this road would help get those people there, either by vehicles or by bicycle or walking. So I think that's the reason why we need it. Sure, we don't have a great downtown in Breslau, but I think our central hub is the Breslau Community Center. So I support what is being presented here.
Councillor Riddick. You're muted, Fred.
I'll vote in favor of the motion. I like Councillor McMillan's to defer it so we can return to it if if we want to do the level crossing later on. And so I'm happy with that, the way that it was phrased.
Okay. I see no further hands. I'll ask the deputy clerk to take a vote. Mr. Brenneman, did you want to speak to it?
No, I just want to get clarification on the wording of the motion. The reason being is because my concern was reference to deferring the Breslau settlement plan was in there when that's already previously approved. I just want to make sure the reference is you're deferring the EA or that transportation particular part, if that's what the motion was, because the Breslau settlement plan was previously approved. I just want to make sure I didn't hear it wrong.
Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking at this number 2 and seeing Breslau settlement area transportation and land use plan and thought that's what we were passing. So I was speaking just specifically about that road, but I thought that it was probably easiest to do all of number 2. So if all of number 2 is not needed to be passed and it's just the EA for the road, then perhaps Councilor Merlihan would be okay if we friendly amended the motion to just be deferring, or you can have a motion for a negative. That's the problem. So approve the Breslau settlement, move forward with the Breslau settlement area transportation and land use plan without the $30 million road. That would be my motion then.
And it's just to be clear, council previously approved the Breslau settlement and transportation plan. I think, you know, and maybe I need Jared and Deanne's help on this, but the bottom line is, I think what was coming back to council was the issue around the EA connector road. Like I said, the Breslau settlement plan and related issues there was previously adopted. Am I incorrect in that, Deanne?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the report that was on the agenda last meeting at Committee of the Whole was a report for council to accept as information, which provided the background for the reasoning why that road was proposed, and to support the recommendations that were in the Breslau Connector Road report that was under Jared back in December.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the Breslau settlement plan was previously approved, adopted, it's been implemented. What was really on council's discussion was what you're going to do about the EA connector road.
Okay, so the first part of the motion is to accept the report as information. And then the second part is the piece on the connector road. And so I think Councillor McMillan, you were wanting to defer the piece on the connector road for further study.
Well, I was trying to make it work. So what if we receive the report as information, but not move forward with the EA on the road?
Okay, that can be your motion. Okay, Councillor.
second that.
Okay.
I'll second that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask our deputy clerk and clerk if that is clear. Yes, okay.
Yeah, so what we have on the table right now is the Breslau settlement plan is for approval, and the EA connector road portion is for deferral. Our mover is Councillor McMillan, and our seconder is Councillor Merlihan, and the deputy clerk or the clerk would like to speak to this.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to be clear, Council, I believe the motion that was moved would be to accept the report that Deanne provided as information. You're not approving a plan, just accepting Deanne's report as information. And then just so council is aware, there is already a motion to defer the Breslau East Connector Road Municipal Class Environmental Assessment Project until Q2 of 2022. So that is currently on the books. If council passed the recommendation as written in the report in front of you, or sorry, the report from the summary of recommendations last meeting, it would have included both. If the mover just moved the first piece, which was to accept the report as information, the Breslau East Connector Road EA would still be tabled.
Okay, Councillor McMillan.
I want Jared to talk.
How's your parliamentary procedure here? I think so. So in effect, if we accept the report as information, leave it at that, the EA will come back to us in Q2. Yes. Mr. Poupey.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I guess what I would be asking from council is, we are in the EA process. So we've come through all of the EA process. We started that process, engaged all the stakeholders. And now what we have before council is a preferred road alignment with the cross section. So the alignment is obviously the plan view of that road, dealing with all kinds of environmental features and so forth to strike that balance in there. And the cross section piece would speak to what seems to be at issue by some this evening, is it includes the bridge, a grade separated crossing. So that's what's before council. I guess what I would look for from council for direction to staff is, I'm not sure what we come back with. I guess that's the thing, is the EA is already, the process is over. So is council just saying they're not interested in accepting the EA and it's done? That's what I would see as an option, saying we're not accepting it. Or is council willing to accept possibly the alignment of the road, but would not look to do the at-grade crossing or the grade separated crossing and want to explore that? I think we need some direction on this EA, because at this form, or at this point, I'm not sure what the ask is of staff to come back with.
Councillor McMillan.
So Mayor Shantz, I only talked about a deferral because I thought we were talking about the whole plan. I thought that's what number 2 was. So I thought we needed to have a plan without the road in that. So I've been informed that we know that plan is already approved and we don't need an approval on that. So my motion is to approve that, receive that report as information, but then not to move ahead from this point with the road that is the topic of discussion tonight. So receive the report as information and decide at this point to not proceed with the road.
So the EA was to come up with a preferred alignment for the road. So at some point we made a decision to put a road in, did we? Or I mean, I know we've talked about it for quite some time. Jeff, clerk, or who wants to? I've got a bunch of people on here.
I can speak, and then I'm sure Deanne can correct me if I'm wrong. On December 7th of 2021, the Committee of the Whole meeting, Council moved a motion considering a report written by Infrastructure Services respecting the Breslau East Connector Road Municipal Class Environmental Assessment Project, endorsed the preferred alignment of the and cross-section of the preferred Breslau East Connector Road, and authorized the Director of Infrastructure Services to issue a notice of study completion. And there's a little bit more there, but that is in your package. I believe Council deferred that until the motion on the books was until Q2 of 2022. Ms. Fries and her team came back with a report, basically, as far as I understand it, trying to answer all the questions that Council had around alignment and the planning piece that had been done previous to the EA. I think what may help is there further information, and I think this is maybe what Jared was getting at, is there further information Council would want to have in front of them before they'd want to come back to that environmental assessment?
Councillor McMillan, and then I'm going to go to Ms. Fries.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I moved the deferral back in December, and it was asking for the planning rationale behind the road, because I don't believe that that a road connects two subdivisions. And at that meeting, we talked about possible commercial corridor and some other ideas that might have a planning rationale for that road. So the report has come to us, and I still don't think the road is going to connect the communities in any meaningful way. So if that deferral to Q2 has been satisfied because it was fast tracked and brought to us during the budget process, thank you, staff, for that extra work. My motion is to receive the report as information and proceed without that road proceeding from this point on. So no, for me, that the information was brought and it doesn't justify the road. So I'm not looking for any further information. There's nothing that, there's no questions. So I asked for the deferral tonight, thinking that we needed that. I've been told that we don't, that the plan has been approved and we don't need to further approve that plan. So, so no, I'm not looking, as the mover, I'm not looking for more information or to have more questions asked. I'm asking us to approve the receipt of the report as information and not proceed with the vote.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Freeze. Do you want to speak to it, please?
I think, Madam Mayor, I think that was answered by Clerk Smith, and I think Councillor McMillan understands as well what the intent of that report was, that what came to Committee of the Whole last week.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shantz.
I guess if we change things around and we change the road alignment and go with a level crossing versus a grade separation, that's going to move that crossing down further towards Greenhouse Road. And are we going to be getting into some wet well area there, or some conservation issues that's going to cost us a lot of dollars as well?
Ms. Freeze, do you know the answer to that? Oh, Mr. Poupet's got his hand up. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. To Councillor Shantz. Yes, there are environmental impacts. I wouldn't have what that magnitude would be, but there certainly would be give and take, obviously, on the cost side of things. The grade separated and the alignment chosen is the preferred, and through a lot of vetting with all of the stakeholders involved. It's still viewed, regardless of council's decision this evening, as the best alignment for a roadway. But I think what's clear to me tonight then is really what council's voting on, is whether they're accepting this EA or not. Do they accept, does council accept this alignment as demonstrated in the report? And if the answer is no, then basically, in my opinion, then the EA would be done without further direction from council. It would be over, and this would not then be included in our DC background study. However, that could be up to council to then direct staff if the answer was no, and to look at this or to bring back additional information, of course, would be in council's bailiwick as well to do. But before council this evening is what I think I was happy to understand from Councillor McMillan now is really the question on the EA itself this evening.
Okay. Councillor Shantz and then Councillor McMillan.
So if we scrap the EA the way it stands now, and we decide that maybe we do need a road, do we have to go through a whole new EA again? Or can this one be brought back at some point? Or once it's gone, it's gone? And what was the cost of that so far?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz, significant costs have been invested here for sure, over $300,000 in this EA. And yes, if it was to be not approved and to be ended, we would have to investigate and go through another EA process in the future at some point if we were looking to provide any form of connection.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, it's been asked to be a recorded vote, and so I just like to make a couple of comments if I'm going to vote on this. I do believe that a road connects communities. I don't believe that a road, I believe that a road assists in connecting communities. I don't believe the road in and of itself will connect communities, but I think without a connector road, it will be more difficult to make that connection. And I have always believed that that we need to pull the two communities together, and it's that piece, I'm going to call it Breslau Properties. I think I've got that wrong now, but that section that that connects the two pieces. This is putting the cost into development charges. It's having development pay for the infrastructure, which is what development charges are for. And yes, it's allocated across the whole township, just as anything that's done in Elmira is allocated across the whole township, and anything that's done in Conestoga or Maryhill is allocated across the whole township. That's how we work with our DCs. This just happens to be in Breslau and not in Elmira. So I'm going to oppose the motion as it's presented. And I'll ask our deputy clerk to call the vote, please.
So this is a recorded vote randomly conducted by the clerk. And what we are voting on is on page 14 of your agenda. It's the Breslau Settlement Area Transportation Land Use that the Council of the Township of Woolwich, considering Report DS 01-2022, respecting Breslau Settlement Area Transportation and Land Use Plan, accept this report as information. If you vote yes, you are approving what I've just read. And Councillor Shantz, how do you vote?
Sorry, I'm not quite clear on the motion.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not even-
we accept the report as information and do not proceed with the connector road. We need that last bit in there because that's in the
Yeah.
report.
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
Councillor Shantz, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Redikoff, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Martin, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Merlehan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor McMillan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Shantz, how do you vote?
No.
That is a tie vote, and therefore the motion is lost.
I would entertain another motion if anyone would care to do that. I'm kind of afraid that we're just going to end up in a stalemate here, though. I would look to the clerks for some guidance here.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So when a vote is tied, it does result in a defeat. If the motion in front of you was to approve the report that was presented at Committee of the Whole last meeting, and not to have a road, not to approve the road or the preferred alignment of the road, you could attempt another motion that would be perhaps the recommendation that was on Ms. Freese's report from last meeting. Again, if that doesn't pass, I think we'd have to look for another motion that maybe would get support, or we would have to defer this for some other maybe information to come forward, or even just for council to maybe consider it further.
Okay. Does anyone want to move the motion as presented? Councillor Shantz?
I'll move the motion as presented, and I would like a recorded vote as well.
Councillor Martin? Second it? Yes? Okay, we'll do it again.
Okay, so this is a recorded vote randomly conducted by the clerk. Recommendation as stated in the report. Councillor McMillan, how do you vote?
Opposed?
Councillor Merlehan, how do you vote?
Opposed?
Counselor Martin, how do you vote?
In favor?
Counselor Redekop, how do you vote?
Opposed?
Counselor Shantz, how do you vote?
In favor?
Mayor Shantz, how do you vote?
In favor.
That again is a tie vote and the recommendation fails.
Counselor McMillan?
Since we're at a stalemate with the report that we currently have, we're approving the EA allows us to collect DCs, but doesn't commit us to spending them. What if we deferred the issue like we did in December until Q2 for council to have a more thorough conversation, debate, staff could come up with other ideas. We could proceed as written, but revisit the issue in Q2. So a motion to proceed, but revisit in the second quarter of 2022.
So proceed with the EA, but revisit the level crossing piece, or
The rationale for the connector road.
Mr. Poupey, does that work for you? Or Ms. Freeze, whoever needs to speak to it? Deanne?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to clarify that the rationale for the collector road was already approved by council through the secondary plan. So that's where that rationale was in there. Now we're just dealing with the EA, which would set the alignment of the road and includes that grade 7.
So would we be, so Councillor McMillan, I hear you say that you don't agree with a connector road.
Right.
At
What we were told by staff was we need to proceed now to start collecting DC charges, but it doesn't commit us to the road.
We are committed to the road. We committed to the road as part of the Breslau secondary plan, is what I just heard Ms. Freeze say. Go ahead.
Again, through you, Madam Mayor. So through that secondary plan, and I can pull up the dates that were in the report as well. Council approved the secondary plan with those recommendations in that plan and requested that staff proceed with the EA. So they gave their approval for a road, just not the alignment of the road. So now the EA coming back will actually clarify where that alignment of the road is. And that's why council needs, or we need council approval again for the alignment through the EA.
Okay.
So the information that we received, sorry, Mayor Shantz, follow up?
Go ahead.
Through you. The information that we received was we need to approve the plan now so we don't fall behind on DCs, but we're not actually committed to building the road. And if a future council decided not to spend the money on the road, it could be diverted to other projects. That came out during this conversation, during this debate. So what I'm saying is we, instead of voting to proceed now and having a council 10 years from now make a decision, proceed for the next, quarter and a half, and then this council can revisit it. It allows us to proceed without committing us to the full expenditure and doesn't waste the $300,000 spent on the A up to this point.
Ms. Freeze?
So yeah, I can comment on that. And I think that Jared or Richard could also clarify as well. My understanding is that the plan is approved. The plan recognizes that there's a need for a connector, but the actual road is not. So by council has the option to not approve the EA. And that would include the construction of the road. Jared, I don't know if you want to provide any additional information there.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, as follow-up to Deanne's comments is correct. I think what is in front of council is approving the EA for this particular alignment of the road. The connector road concept was approved through the other planning reports over time, and now it's just what does that road look like? And that's really what's before council this evening. To Councillor McMillan's point is council could defer their decision on this. They could defer their decision on the EA and request that staff come back to look at grade. Again, that was already vetted. I want to be clear though, that was discussed and vetted, but we can bring that back for council to look at, or council could simply obviously not approve it, and then it would die this evening. So I think that's if Councilor McMillan is looking to at least just defer, I think that's what I could see as deferral options, is just defer decision period, but we would then come back with the same report or defer with instructions, and we could look to provide additional information.
Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz. I guess this is a bit of a learning opportunity for myself anyway. When we, I guess, are approving plans in stages, we should have all the information about that plan up front. This part of the EA with this road and the cost was the first time that cost and the overpass was put before council, which, for me was just a deal breaker on the whole thing. So, I was part of, approving the connector road. I mean, we've been talking about it for years. It wasn't a surprise that the road was gonna be there. But the surprise was the sheer cost. And it was certainly more than I think any of us imagined. And, I think if it was set out in the beginning, what we were looking at, then, I think it might have been, well, I don't know what it would have been, but anyway, we would have been having this debate, last year, not this year. I'm just wondering, I mean, as far as getting me to go on the positive, we'd have to get rid of that. We'd have to have a level crossing to cut that, because I truly do not believe that benefits anybody in the township, like nobody in Breslau, nobody. So if there's any willingness to remove that from the whole EA road connector, I could be possibly motivated to change my vote.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Through you, and I guess I'll say to Deanne. So from what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, basically we have approval for everything, but the EA was going to flush out the alignment of the road. Am I correct on that?
Yes, council, through you, Madam Mayor, council approved the plan, which indicated that there would be a road. But the actual road doesn't get determined in the exact alignment until the EA is done. Council also approved staff to go ahead with the EA, but now we're at the point where the actual EA has to be approved by council.
Councillor Redicott.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Jared. So if we turn down this EA because we want a level crossing, we have to do a whole new EA because it's a different road alignment?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Redicott, no, we wouldn't. It was an option that was vetted. So council could elect this evening to not endorse the alignment that is before them and request additional information to make another decision on another alignment. That will take some additional time and effort, obviously, and some dollars to do that, but that's certainly in council's care and control to do that this evening if they wish and look at that. We will need to obviously get some information on that at grade crossing and anything that council is asking for this evening. So it would, in short answer, we wouldn't have to start again. We wouldn't have to end it. If council does not want to connect a road, then the EA ends this evening. That would be the decision of council, and it would be over. And then the future council could elect to pick up another EA if they wished or not. But the alignment is what is at odds this evening. So there could be information directed to staff to come back with further alignments or investigation.
Okay, thank you, Jared.
Councillor Shantz.
Part of the EA study, was there alignment that would have us at a level crossing rather than the grade separation? Or was that not even part of the study?
Through Mayor Shantz, Councillor Shantz, it absolutely was investigated. Yes, it was. There was that option available.
And so was it the public feedback that got the bridge, or was it the or how did we determine the bridge was the better route to go?
So I don't have all of the information, but from a high level, and we can provide additional information from a high level, it was the indemnity that the rail authority would be placing on the township of Woolwich was one of the major concerns. Metrolinx is opposed to at-grade crossings, new at-grade crossings. They want grade separated. Transport Canada requires at-grade separated crossings where possible as well. They only deal with they only deal with at-grade for existing conditions. Typically, new crossings are grade separated. And again, Township of Woolwich would have all of the indemnity. We would indemnify Metrolinx for everything resulting from anything that happens, whether it be a train derailment, loss of cargo shipment, or anything that's going to run on those lines. The Township of Woolwich potentially would then be on the hook. And I forget what the terminology is, but there is a legitimate liability with regards to moving goods and services on a rail authority or rail line. And we would be responsible for that. So it was good reason that we came in with grade separated. And while it may be cheaper on the upfront cost, certainly the liability could be 10 times this amount, in damages to that the township would have to pay, and those would be on the backs of the ratepayers.
If I could just do a follow-up, Mayor Shantz. So I guess my concern is there's talk about the possibility the GO station might not be located there. So my concern is if it would get moved in closer into Kitchener, we could be seeing high-speed trains going there. If we want to get a serious GO train into Toronto, we want to get the speed up. And so if we don't have to stop there for a future GO station, traffic could go, or the trains could go through there at a fairly good clip. And there again, it's a safety issue. So I think it's really short-sighted that we would look at a at-grade crossing for a track here. It just doesn't make sense in my mind. I just think that that's short-sighted.
Councillor Merlihan.
Yeah, I guess after Mr. Poupé's chat there, I'm going to go back on the side of I'm going to oppose the road altogether. If we don't have the road, which again, the report doesn't justify the road, but we're creating a liability for the township in the future. There are other level crossings there in Breslau. There's two others. I don't know about this high speed. If you have to, they'll have to be stopping at other ones, and I'm sure there are train regulations about going through residential areas at certain speeds. But I think I'm all the way back on opposing the whole alignment. So yeah, that'll be off the table for me.
Okay. So if that is a wish for a motion, I'm assuming that would be to what's the word, to not approve the EA or to move forward without the road. So are there any parameters around that? I'll ask the clerks in terms of.
That was my motion, wasn't it, Mayor Shantz?
To not approve, not to go ahead with the EA?
I think that was my motion.
Okay, we talked through a lot of things. I'll ask the deputy clerk to clarify what the first motion was.
I would recommend not putting a negative motion on the table and putting a motion that says we will go forward with the EA. And at that point, council can approve it or not approve it. That would be my recommendation.
Have we not already had those two votes?
Only one.
Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, we only voted on my motion, and my motion was to not proceed with the EA, to receive the report as information and not proceed with the EA. That was, I'm pretty sure that was my motion, and it was defeated in a tie.
Okay, is that where we landed?
So now we are saying we don't want to proceed with that first motion.
I just want to know what the first motion was.
So the first motion was to accept the report as information. And I believe that and including the EA, I believe it was to include the EA. Can we get the minutes?
Jeff, Deputy Smith, I almost made you counsel.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. So the first motion on the table was to approve the report for information. Sorry, I'm just on the wrong screen here. Was to approve the report DSO1 2022 for information and not to approve the preferred alignment for the Breslau East Connector Road. That was voted on. It had a tie vote and it failed. The second motion was to accept report DSO1 2022 for information and endorse the recommendations in report IS 32 2021, which was the preferred road for the Breslau East Connector Road. So those motions, I guess, have both been passed. If council change their mind, of course, there's always the opportunity to reconsider a vote that's taken place. I think council's also talked about a potential deferral if there was a more information or something else that could come forward that would help council make their decision on this. This could be deferred. You could ask for staff to come forward with potential more information or more costing on different alternatives. If council had additional questions for the liability piece, I think you could ask for potentially a brief and closed session on the liability piece. But if I suppose if council is divided on this piece, I'm not sure how you want to move forward tonight.
Okay, thank you. The clarification was helpful. So to Councillor McMillan's position, we voted to not accept the alignment, not to not accept the road, the connector road in total. Mr. Brenneman, did you want to speak?
Just to emphasize something that our clerk, Jeff Smith, indicated, which is, if council is ultimately really struggling with finding, pardon the pun, alignment on this particular issue, ultimately, you could move on and I mean, you have defeated motions that have occurred. If by some stretch of the imagination at a future meeting, there was some other position that was taken that could gain appropriate support, then that's always an option. It was just to emphasize that one of the other options is that if council truly struggles with trying to get something that a majority can support, then you can always take a break on this issue and it can come back at a future meeting time.
So would you like a motion of deferral to make that happen? Is that the proper procedure? I think, Councillor Shantz.
Could we have some information on how long we can defer before we miss the opportunity to add it to the DC charges this go around?
It's a good question, Council. Who knows the answer to that one?
I think Jared or Richard.
Here? Richard? Who wants to jump in? Mr. Patrick, you haven't said anything for a couple of screens here.
So through you, Madam Mayor. So we're already busily working, if that's the right word for busily, working on the DC amendment. So that can be as quick or as slow as council may want to see this issue come forward. I think this is the opportunity, if we're going at it, this is the opportunity to do it. You don't want to be doing too many DC amendments because that's not the proper way of doing things. Our next full study is not until 2024. Means we need to defer. That's not a problem.
What's council's wish here? Do you want to defer this, or Councillor Shantz?
I would recommend that we defer. We're not getting anywhere with it tonight, but no later than Q2.
Okay. Defer till Q2 at the latest. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Redekop? Further discussion? Councillor McMillan?
What happens with the EA that's been done if, you know, we've got a recommendation from staff, if there's just no support from council on the recommendation? What happens with the EA and the $300,000 that's been spent on that, you know, tonight? If council doesn't make an affirmative statement that we're not proceeding with the alignment, but there's no affirmative statement, what happens with the AA and how long can that be deferred for?
Mr. Poupey?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you to Councillor McMillan. I think if a recommendation like that has a short duration, Q2 or something this year of a deferral, the EA would just be paused essentially and until council makes a decision. But ultimately, a decision would need to be made on the EA. But we would have to get back to council on what those timeframes are. But at this point, the pause that we're speaking of wouldn't be an issue. It would just sort of sit until council did make a decision later this year.
Councillor Merlehan?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Mr. Poupey. Other EAs that we've done, the timeline's been, you know, like 10 years out on to act on any of the recommendations from an EA. Could we not defer this till, say, a new council? If we're split on this and not going to get anywhere, you know, it can pause until, you know, 2023. Is that a possibility?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I would like to get back to council on what those timeframes are. Typically, an EA has direction and it's been endorsed or approved in some form of fashion. So there would be approval, and then it's a matter of enacting the recommendation or that approval. And that's where it has a timeline. So council would endorse, in this instance, endorses this alignment, and then there may be no action. And then the EA would eventually expire. If there was no work done on it, that would happen. If it was approved, that's a possibility. I'm not familiar of a situation where an EA just sort of sits there without a decision. I think that's what we're up to at this moment. So if council is going to defer their decision on this EA, that will give us time to come back to council with better answers as to that time that it can sit without a decision. Ultimately, it will die at some form, I'm sure, if there was no decision made.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I'd like to move an amendment to Councillor Shantz's motion that we push it to the end of Q3 and add to that deferral that we ask staff what our options are going forward with regards to what has already been approved, how we can change approval to that, give a more thorough explanation to what our options are. So amend it from Q2 to the end of Q3 to give staff enough time. So the end of Q3, and have staff provide council with options going forward based on what has already been passed and what we need to pass going forward.
Councillor Shantz?
I'm not good with that record or that amendment, because if we go into Q3, then we're into the summertime where we have holidays and all that kind of stuff going on. We won't make a decision. So I think staff can come back by the end of Q2 and get us that information that we need. I don't understand what information that we're going to be able to garner anyway, but I don't want to go into Q3.
Okay, Mr. Brenneman.
Yeah, I'd like Clerk Smith's help with the fact that I think one of the pieces of information council should have in considering this is we're in an election year. And if we end up in lame duck, how would that impact what quarter council would have to reasonably be able to make a decision, or what quarter, if it would fell in and we were in lame duck, they couldn't make a decision.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. So council, because it's an election year, council does have to consider lame duck. Council can become lame duck if more than 4 members are not running for the same position on council, or more than 4 members are not elected to the same position. So the clerk's office calculates those 2 dates at two times, once on nomination day, and then the second time would be on election day. And those dates, I'm just pulling up my calendar here. Oh, thank you. So nomination day is August 17th this year, and election day is October 24th.
Okay, thank you. So the motion on the floor is to defer this issue till the end of Q2 at the latest, the end of June. And it's been moved and seconded, so I will call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. And the next piece, I just want to make a couple of comments before we deal with the budget. I want to thank staff for their professionalism and discernment of the budget. Staff, you begin work on the budget in late summer or maybe before. You take a look at what needs to be done in your area, what would be nice to do, and what you've heard throughout the year in feedback from council and residents. You put that all together and then look at it again as to whether it's affordable. After that, you all get together and discuss the budget as a whole, and I can only imagine the horse trading that goes on in those meetings, especially between rec and infrastructure services, I would venture to say. When Richard comes to ask us where we stand on the bottom line, it is not so staff can beef up a budget to match a magic figure. It is so they have a sense of how much they need to downwardly adjust their priorities so they can bring us a reasonable budget. In a perfect world, staff would be so in tune to council that they would present us with exactly what we want. While it's not a perfect world, you do an excellent job of sifting through our many discussions and helping us through a very difficult process. So thank you to Richard and the rest of SMT for your dedication and service to Woolwich. While staff give us their best professional advice as to where they would put the available dollars, it is council that has the final say. And so this is council's budget. We each come at the budget from our own experiences, skills, and expertise. Some of us use a more overarching governance approach to ensure priorities are addressed. Others prefer to dig into the details. Some have a penchant for infrastructure, others for environmental issues or recreation. Some like math and numbers, others like the provision of services. Some of us work quietly behind the scenes, while others prefer the public debate. It is a complex process as we consider how to provide the needed services, maintain the assets we have, look at where the funding comes from, and try to figure out what is fair to the taxpayer. Each of you have done your due diligence and contributed to the outcome. And I want to thank you, council, for your differences, as difficult as that can be at times, for your time, for your dedication to the people of Woolwich, because that is how we end up with a good result in the end. Number 5 is budget approval, and would someone like to move it or discuss it? Councillor Shantz?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment, and it's somewhat similar to your comments. I thought it would be nice to have all of the senior management staff to turn on their video cameras so that we can see who they are.
Good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, so through you, I would like to staff for many years and during COVID and moving into viral meetings, you've been silently waiting in the background and not visible on screen, waiting to answer any of council's question. And some evenings we don't even see you until it's time for signing out. I just wanted to personally say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do for the Township of Woolwich and have done on this year's budget. Council sent you away with a task, and once again, you performed at an Olympic level. At the end of my comments, I will be asking for a recorded vote, but I'm not going to ask for any changes. During your presentations, I have voiced my concerns around debentures. The capital budget and the 2023 capital forecast demonstrates the need for more dollars. So that is why I'm supporting the increase for the special infrastructure levy. Hopefully, so we don't have to debenture so much in the future. I want to take this opportunity to explain that the stumbling block for me is the debenture on the Peel Street Bridge and not the entire budget. I also want to be clear to the Winterburn community that I understand the need for repairs to be done on the Peel Street Bridge and that it should be reopened. However, as Councillor Martin and I have stated in the past, we do not think Council took the opportunity to exhaust all the options, especially the option that would allow the Old Order Mennonite horse and buggy community access across the river. Mr. Poupé, and I don't know if Mr. Tucker is close by or if he's watching, but if not, we can send this to him. I want to personally thank both of you for the time and work you spent on the Peel Street Bridge. I think this was one of, if not the most contentious issue that this council had to work through this, other than tonight, obviously. You were both pushed and pulled in all directions by the community and by this council, and you were both able to perform at nothing short of Olympic gold in my mind. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for this opportunity, because the minutes will be recorded that I voted not in favor of the budget, but the reasons why will not. Mayor Shantz, I would like to request that the vote on the budget be recorded. Thank you.
Okay, is there a seconder? Moved by or seconded by Councillor Martin. Further discussion? Okay, we'll call the vote.
So this is a recorded vote randomly conducted by the clerk, and you are voting on the recommendation found on page 14, the 2022 budget approval. And Councillor McMillan, how do you vote?
In favor?
Councillor Merlehan, how do you vote?
In favor.
Councillor Martin, how do you vote?
Opposed?
Councillor Redekop, how do you vote?
In favor?
Councillor Shantz, how do you vote?
Opposed?
Mayor Shantz, how do you vote?
In favor.
And that recommendation is approved and is carried.
Thank you. That brings us, and so thank you again to council and to staff for all the work on this. It's been a good discussion. That brings us to staff reports and memos, and I will call on probably Mr. Poupé, I think, or Ms. Fries. Zone change application for Oscar Weber.
David Gundrum is here as well from staff.
Okay, welcome.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor Shantz, members of Township Council. Good evening. So following application for zone change, public meeting for this application was held previously on November 23rd, 2021. Pursuant to the Planning Act. I'm just going to share screen momentarily here for council's benefit. So the subject property shown here, if council can see the aerial image on the screen, is located approximately 2 kilometers north of Elmira on the east side of Arthur Street North, being 989 Arthur Street North. Subject property is approximately 12 acres in area, contains a single detached dwelling shown here with the gray roof, livestock barn shown here to the south, 2 accessory farm buildings shown here, and the subject woodworking shop shown here. Property is designated as a rural land use area in the township's official plan and is zoned agricultural. To remind council from the public meeting held in November, the applicant is proposing to amend the agricultural zoning with site-specific provisions to recognize the use of the woodworking shop on the property to permit an expansion from the existing 172 square meters to allow a maximum size of the use of 302 square meters for the use. The shop expansion will be contained within the limits of the existing building shown here with no additions proposed. The existing shop is operated by the resident farm property owner and has a legal non-conforming status that was granted through minor variance, which was granted in 2013 that limited the use to the 172 square meters within the accessory building. The woodworking shop has existed on the subject property for many years and is an established operation on the subject property, which is located within the farm cluster. Section 614 of the official plan acknowledges that it is neither desirable nor envisioned to relegate uses to a legal non-conforming status under zoning that are otherwise recognized as permitted and long-standing, which is the case here. The previous minor variance established a formal recognition that the existing woodworking shop was and is permanent and long-standing in a legal non-conforming sense. The policies under section 614 of the official plan direct the preferred approach is to establish appropriate site-specific zoning regulations rather than maintaining a blanket legal non-conforming status, as is the current case. The proposed amendment would seek to rectify this situation consistent with the preferred approach of our township land use policies. Since the woodworking shop located in the building here is located in proximity to an existing residential use at 991 Arthur Street North, township staff requested that a land use compatibility assessment be undertaken as the woodworking shop use is located closer to the sensitive residential use to the west as would be permitted under zoning. The woodworking shop is approximately 120 meters from the residential use, whereas our zoning bylaw requires a minimum separation distance of 150 meters. Based on the findings of the land use compatibility study, the third-party professional reviewers concluded that they were satisfied that the operational activities associated with the woodworking shop would be of no concern and no impact to the residential use located to the west. The use has been found to conform to the provincial policy statement and the associated guidelines on permitted uses within Ontario's prime agricultural areas, as well as applicable policies of the regional official plan, as well as the township official plan. Therefore, staff are recommending that Township Council approve the request for zoning bylaw amendment as it applies to the subject property. That is the summary of the application, as well as our recommendation to council. I'll stop share screen at this point and be happy to answer any questions that members of council may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilor Merlehan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you to Mr. Gundrum. The property there only being 12 acres of farmland, Does staff look at whether or not the agricultural business of the land is actually the primary business on that? I just because on-farm businesses is supposed to supplement income rather than being the main income, and farming as a secondary. And 12 acres is not a very large farm.
Through the mayor, Councilor Merlehan, a very good question. So in this case, in the course of our review, the provincial guidelines for on-farm diversified uses in the province of Ontario stipulate that an on-farm diversified use is either to be a maximum of 1 hectare of the area of the farm, or 2% of the total area of the farm, that the area of operation that is, or the lesser of those two figures. And so that would be the case here. And the intent, it is, the application is consistent with those provincial guidelines, such that staff are of the opinion that the principal use of the farm property would still be primarily for agricultural production, cropping, or otherwise, and that this proposed expansion would not compromise the principal use of the property for primary agricultural production.
Okay, so that metric then, it's only based on land use, it's not based on income. Is that correct then?
Through the mayor, Councilor Merlehan, that is correct. We don't evaluate against income. It's based on a proportion of the land base in terms of area. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Someone like to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor McMillan, second by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Other business. I don't have a report this evening. Any reports from council? Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you, I would like to respectfully address council. I am referring to some specific disparaging remarks that were made at last week's Committee of the Whole meeting on Monday, February 7th, 2022. Mayor Shantz, I was utterly dismayed that this virtual council chambers had to witness the dictionary definition of superiority. That definition being the state of fact of being better, more important, or higher in rank than others. The belief that you are better than other people. However, the stunned and deafening silence which allowed those disparaging remarks ultimately had the last word. Mayor Shantz, I personally feel a collegial line was crossed last week. The behavior was not in keeping with the spirit of this council chambers, Woolwich Council, or this wonderful township we all come home. It is my hope that we can do better in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Any other reports from council? Comments? Councilor Merlehan?
Yeah, through you, just wanted to let council know and the public know that on February 26th, the coldest night of the year is happening, and it's been going on for quite a few years, and they're raising money for Woolwich Community Services, and it's a great fundraiser for Woolwich Community Services, and I hope people out there support the 100 and I think it's almost 40 walkers at this point. So anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I just want to comment on what Councillor Shantz said. And really, my comments are more is what we read in the paper, the local paper and the Kitchener Record. A couple of months ago, we actually had some discussion about what type of thing is put in the paper and print, what kind of slant is put to it, or what's omitted from a report. And what I see in the paper here fits exactly into what we had discussed. The first portion of the newspaper talks about concerns about how much money was being spent was in the plan, and it goes on and on. You'd think we'd have a Woolwich tax watch on council, but yet it fails to say that he actually approved the budget. And things that aren't accurate. Down the line, it says Councilor Murray Martin brought a motion to increase the infrastructure levy by 2%, but couldn't get a seconder. That is not true. I asked for an increase of 0.5% because we've already got 1.5 to a total of 2%, but this says I asked for a levy of 2%. So that isn't correct.
Okay,
And
Councillor Martin, just to, I guess I'm not sure this forum is the place to correct the paper. But if you've got some other things to carry on, go ahead.
well, maybe it should be done in another form then, if that's the case, if that's the way you feel. It also talks about Martin and Councillor Redekop were yelling. It imposes that we're yelling at each other. That is not the case. I never said one word to Councillor Redekop. The exchange was between Councillor Merlehan and Councillor Redekop, back and forth. In fact, Councillor Merlehan yelled at him and said, "Don't preach to me." And that's when the mayor stepped in and said, "Enough is enough." So none of that is even in this paper, the other half of it. And what I read in this paper, I can't believe that you're so willing to put somebody down to make yourself look good. And you even go to the length of not being totally truthful, or like my uncle used to say, very careless with the truth, to make your point. I think the behavior was way wrong. I mean, I see a smug face already, and I mean, he just thinks he was right.
Councillor Martin, Councillor Martin.
The last thing
Councillor Martin. This isn't the place to take it up with the paper, and this isn't the place.
You may be exactly right, but I will differ from you, because this was all done in public, so it needs to be addressed in public so that people would know.
The piece for the paper needs to be taken up with the paper. Okay, but I understand that the discussion happened in the council chamber in public, and the discussion it is on the record in the YouTube live stream. So while I appreciate where you're coming from, we need to be careful in this forum to not attack each other, and to, if it's with the paper, if the issue is with the paper, to take it up with the paper. Councillor Merlehan.
Councillor Shantz is right. There's lots of things that are said at this council setting over years that I find disparaging about people that come here and come as delegates and are told they are liars. I've heard members come as delegates as a seniors association and being told that they're cheap and not worthy of getting funding. I've had staff members here come to me and are thoroughly embarrassed about some of the things that are said at this council table, including at the beginning of COVID, when we had a member of council talk about how people are on their own. If they don't have 3 months of salary, well, too bad for them. Councillor Shantz is right. There are lots of things being said. There's lots of things being said in closed sessions to members of council that are disparaging to them as well. It does happen. But coming into this public forum, I mean, none of us have any kind of parliamentary privilege. So calling a local business a liar, that has consequences. You know, you can't say those kinds of things. So while people's feelings are hurt, I didn't ask to be put on the front cover of the record. Okay, yeah, that's enough, Councillor Martin.
Martin and Councillor Merlehan both.
I'm just trying to speak, and Councillor Martin has no interest in listening. That's fine. I don't care. I don't care what he has to say. But anyway, if you want to have something to say to me, then say it to my face, not in a meeting, and I have no problem with that. Call me anytime. You have my phone number. You can email me just as well. I'll take any of your criticism.
Councillor Shantz, you turned your mic on.
Oh, sorry, I didn't intend to. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on council reports, updates, comments? I think Councillor Shantz and Councillor Merlehan and Councillor Martin are all correct. There have been a lot of things said over the course of the last council, many of them less than flattering to all of us. And I hope that, as Councillor Shantz said, that we can do better. Because as I said in my remarks at the beginning of the budget, every one of us works in our own way, and every one of us does due diligence. And I find this council to be a very hardworking council. And we've had some very difficult discussions. And I've said, I said, I think at the beginning of both terms, that it's our differences that will make for good decisions. So I trust that we can do that respectfully and acknowledge that we always will have differences, and that we come at things in a different way, but that doesn't mean that anyone is less than any other one. And I'll stop there. Outstanding activity list, anything to discuss there? Okay, no notice of motion. We have bylaws, a motion that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw number 11-2022 to 16-2022, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the corporate seal. I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Redekop, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? Excuse me, that's carried, and that brings us to adjournment. A motion to adjourn to meet again in regular session on Monday, March 7th, 2022. Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? That's carried. Council would like to thank all who participated or tuned in to the meeting tonight on our YouTube live stream. I'll remind council to stay connected until we receive confirmation that the live stream has stopped. And good night, everyone.